welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. This is the Real Impact Daily Inspiration Series. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and he is the author of Real Impact Daily Inspiration. Volume 1 and 2 and 3 are on their way. Dennis Henson, it's great to have you back again as we continue talking about the Dreamer.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate you having me.
We have the Dreamer that we've been talking about now for quite a number of weeks, and we continue that conversation as we continue with the Dreamer.
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Around the same time, Universal executives decided that they would like to replace Alice with a new cartoon character, possibly a rabbit. So they asked Winkler Pictures to make that happen. Margaret wanted to give the project to Disney. However, Charles disagreed. But Margaret, who still owned the company, offered it to him anyway. Walt concurred that Alice had run its course and was excited to accept the new challenge. iWorks created a rabbit character that Mintz approved. When Universal executives came up with names they liked, they couldn't agree on which one, so they had a drawing and literally pulled Oswald the Rabbit out of their hat. Since a rabbit's foot was believed to bring good luck, the character was ultimately named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. In 1926, at Roy's urging, the studio was renamed Walt Disney Studios. Roy believed the new name fit better because Walt was the visionary. That same year, the studio moved to a new building on Hyperion Avenue, the birthplace of some of Disney's greatest films, also known as Hyperion Studio. Walt Disney Studio devoted 100% of its effort to the production of Oswald, and almost immediately, audiences and critics alike warmed to the Lucky Rabbit. 9 Oswald shorts were released in 1927 alone. With the series an incredible success, Walt convinced Roy to allow him to bring in additional animators. He hired many of his Laugh-O-Gram artists and supplemented his studio with local talent. Additionally, he brought the latest state-of-the-art equipment and taught animation night classes to the new animators. The expansion and the demand for more shorts caused production costs to soar. To save money, Walt split the artists into groups to develop 2 cartoons simultaneously. Yet despite their success, Mintz continually downplayed Disney's work. Trouble brewing. With Walt spending most of his time trying to improve the business, he was oblivious to the behind-the-scenes chaos brewing. Rumors were rampant that George Winkler, Mintz's brother-in-law, was conspiring with Disney animators. Still, Walt was too busy to bother with gossip and dismissed the idea. As the Oswald contract wound down, Disney's production costs surpassed their income. Nevertheless, the series' popularity had Walt and Roy convinced that their agreement would easily be renewed and include a pay increase. A trip to New York. Unaware of the betrayal, Walt and Lillian traveled to New York to renegotiate. Mintz had already secured a new Oswald deal with Universal. When Walt arrived at Winkler Pictures, he was optimistic about the future. But his optimism quickly vanished when Mintz proposed a 20% reduction in pay for retaining Disney. Walt couldn't believe what he was hearing and threatened to drop the project altogether. However, Mintz reminded him that contractually, all characters appearing in the shorts were the property of Universal Studios, and as was the custom in those days, Disney's contract relinquished those copyrights. But the worst was yet to come. Mintz had successfully coerced 19 of Disney's 22 animators to sign contracts with him, and even though Walt attempted to make a separate deal with Universal, Winkler Pictures already had a signed contract. Universal suggested that Mintz be allowed to take over Disney Studios to salvage Disney. Walt rejected that idea and walked away from Oswald, resolving to retain the future rights to his characters. A prophetic warning. Before leaving New York, Walt met with Mintz a final time and gave him this prophetic warning. Be prepared. If those guys desert me, they will do the same to you. As usual, Disney was correct. The following year, 2 of those same animators met with Universal executives in an attempt to take over Oswald's distribution from Mintz. Consequently, Universal, sick of all the bickering and politics, took Oswald's distribution in-house and assigned it to Walter Lantz, Woody Woodpecker's eventual creator. But before Lance accepted the assignment, he checked with Walt and received his blessing. The two gentlemen remained friends for the balance of their lives. Since Universal's involvement meant Walt's films were shown in larger, more prestigious theaters, and the cartoons were a hit with audiences and critics alike, Disney greatly benefited from the exposure he received. Back to square one. No longer owning the characters that he created, and having lost the vast majority of his animators, a devastated and saddened Walt Disney yet again faced an imminent business collapse. The Train Ride Home, 1928. He had taken those struggling artists with raw talent and trained them to be professionals in a new form of media. He considered them friends and loved them like family. Disney's heart was broken. He'd been betrayed and lost his characters. With these things weighing on his mind, he and Lillian boarded the train to Hollywood. Determined not to be destroyed or to face Roy and Ub without a single character, Walt took a notepad and began to draw. Cats were out. There were too many cat cartoons already. And though he sketched a raccoon, a dog, a possum, a bear, even a frog, nothing seemed right, and his feelings of depression persisted. But the motion of the moving train, the ringing of the bell, the rhythmic clacking, and the occasional blows of the whistle helped to soothe his ruffled spirit. Before long, the sweet relief of sleep overtook him. While drifting off, he recalled the last time he'd felt so low. Soon he found himself back at his Laugh-O-Gram office, commiserating with Mort. A jolt of the train woke him from his dream. Then, like a bolt out of the blue, it hit him. A mouse! My character will be a mouse! Now, wide awake, Walt looked at Lillian. She sensed the change in his demeanor. What is it, Walt? I have it. My new character will be a mouse. Mortimer Mouse. Although Lillian managed a faint smile, Walt could tell she had reservations. What, you don't think a mouse is a good choice? Oh, it's not that. It's the name. It should be happier and friendlier. Maybe Mickey would be a better fit. Walt looked at his wife for a few seconds. Then, as a big smile covered his face, he said the name for the first time. Mickey Mouse? Mickey Mouse! I think you may have something there. And so was conceived the most famous cartoon character ever to grace the silver screen. Mickey Mouse. He couldn't wait to tell Roy and Ub. Walt Disney often said, I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse. But I sometimes wonder, which mouse? Of course, I don't know what really happened in that train car. Still, none of the evidence I've uncovered disputes anything in this story. Mickey Mouse takes shape. By the time that train ride ended, Walt had mapped out a plan to produce Mickey Mouse cartoons, and upon Walt's return to Hollywood, iWorks took the lead in implementing that plan. Unfortunately, Disney's optimism wasn't shared by the big movie houses. When he showed Mickey to MGM, they were unimpressed and remarked, a giant mouse on the screen would terrify women, and nothing about this character stands out above any others. So despite Walt's considerable effort to market Mickey, no one was interested. Mickey was just another character competing for screen space with Felix the Cat and even Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. His first two cartoons, Plain Crazy and The Galloping Gaucho, failed to find distribution. But Walt's belief was strong, so he moved forward with a new and different approach.
Well, I'll tell you, to have a mouse as a character, he actually ushered in a whole slew of mice. When you're talking about, of course, Mickey, and then there was Tom and Jerry, the cat and mouse team, and then there have been in Warner Brothers, what was it? The Spanish, the Mexican mouse, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. Speedy Gonzales.
Speedy Gonzales, yeah, Speedy.
Yeah.
Also Mighty Mouse.
A Mighty Mouse, that's right. That's right. We're going to talk more about this and, of course, about the relationship that Disney had with all of these different people in this segment of our Story of the Dreamer as we continue here on the Real Impact Daily Inspiration series with Dennis Henson, author thereof, and yours truly, Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, here on Tell Me Your Story. This is the Real Impact series of Tell Me Your Story with Dennis Henson, author of the first of 3 volumes, and who knows, there may be more, but right now there's going to be a volume 2 and a volume 3. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but let's get back into the dreamer, Walt Disney, and the dynamics of the relationships that he had through this section of the story as it's been told. And there's this phrase, Dennis, and it kind of goes like this: no good deed ever goes unpunished. And in a manner of speaking, that sort of applies here with what happened to Walt.
Exactly. He got stabbed in the back quite often, and but he always got right back up and dusted his pants and went forward. That's the amazing part of the story, because he could have quit a lot of times where things really didn't look bright for his future, but he never stopped. He just kept going.
Yeah. And I think this is a good lesson for all of us, myself included, where we feel like every time we turn around, someone's trying to do us in. Now, I remember when I first started driving the streets of California, the highways and so forth, when we moved here to Santa Barbara, some 19 years ago. And someone made the comment to me about all the drivers that I thought were doing stupid things, and I would get really irritated and so forth. And they'd say, "You do have to understand, Richard, they did not get up this morning and say, let's get Richard. Okay? It's not that personal." And in a manner of speaking, many times when things like that happen to us, it isn't. However, I think that in Walt's case, in this stretch of the story, it kind of was personal, because they saw how successful he was becoming, and they wanted to be as successful. So the only way to do it, instead of working on their focal point of their animation of what they wanted to do at Universal, they attacked him. And I'll be honest with you, in the long run, I don't think that ever works in the long run.
No. Actually, it wasn't Universal that really stabbed him in the back. There was a person in between him and Universal. His name was Mintz, and he was very jealous of Walt Disney and the Disney Group. He thought he could do it better and cheaper. And his wife owned the studio. Mintz's wife owned the studio that had brought Disney in, and he never liked them from the beginning, and he was always talking down about them. And when the first chance he got, he stole the character. Well, actually, he didn't steal the characters. He stole the animators and the contract. Universal owned the characters, and Universal really didn't know that Mintz was pulling those tricks. They finally got tired of the problems that Mintz was causing, and they took the contract back and started doing the marketing themselves. So he lost everything, and nobody knows who he is anymore. If you mentioned his name, unless you've heard this story, not many people have, you wouldn't even know who he was. So the best revenge is success.
Yeah, and that revenge is sweet, because you're not going after the other person in the typical movie and television series scenarios where the person is wronged and now spends the rest of the program going after the people that wronged him. In this instance, his revenge was focusing on what his goal was. What a lesson we could all learn from that, Dennis.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just amazing, and it's one of those things where I will, because my wife likes those kinds of films. I'll sit and I'll watch it with her, but I see what's happening at the front end of the movie, and I'm going, in the rest of the movie, we're going to watch this person go after all the people that wronged him and kill them and shoot them and blow them up, and then by the end of the movie, the person realizes, well, that didn't change anything. I still feel like crap because of what happened. All these people are dead, but I'm no better off. I haven't accomplished anything in terms of my goal. And unfortunately, I know that there's at least that undercurrent attitude that's sort of prevailing. Yes, in this country, certainly around the world. in terms of people playing the victim, that it's somebody else's fault. And Disney never took that position, did he?
No, it's funny. He was at his very lowest point when he came up with his new character that pretty much changed everything. But further along in the story, it even gets worse. I mean, you think, well, no, it couldn't get any worse than this because he lost all of his animators and had to start all over and no characters he had to start. And once he created Mickey Mouse and started producing those cartoons and putting them out, they were extremely successful. Unfortunately, he'd signed a contract with a crook, and once again, the crook stole all of his money. He had to start all over again. So, poor old fellow, but he was resilient. He just shrugged it off and kept going, which is really a key to success. You're going to get knocked down. What you do then is what's important.
I'll tell you, Dennis, it's fascinating because I just had a fascinating conversation with a gentleman who he owns a tow truck company, and we were chatting away about all these different aspects, that kind of thing, and he was telling me how, well, this business, it was my father's, and then I bought it from him. And I went through all of the processes of being able to buy it from my father, and so forth. And I'm going to do the same thing with my sons. I'm not going to give it to them. I'm going to sell it to them if they want it, and so forth. And then we talked about the work ethic and so forth. And this guy Mintz wanted to do it cheaper, right? That was one of the other parts of the conversation, was that everybody wants everything cheap. And it doesn't matter whether it's quality or not. And so then we start shipping our manufacturing, and this, for example, overseas, or maybe it is our animation. Maybe other countries can do it cheaper. And now with our online abilities and the cloud, it's so much easier, and on and on and on. And it's like, yeah, but is it really quality? And I wanted to ask you about that in regards to Walt Disney's animation abilities. Was he a good drawer from the outset, or was that something that he really, really had to work at until he was the one who designed the original Mickey Mouse, right?
Probably I worked. He was a good artist, and from the time he was a child, he was an artist, and he wanted to be an artist, and he really enjoyed it. But it didn't take him long once he got into the business to realize if he was going to do animation, one person couldn't do all the artwork that needed to be done. So he had to bring in other animators, and he trained them, and a lot of them were better than him. Well, being a smart guy, he thought, well, if they're better than me, I need to bring in more of those. Because as long as I'm the boss and they're working for me and they're better than me, it pushes me up. He was really great at delegation.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, the people he brought in and loved and trained and treated him like his family, they stabbed him in the back too, several times throughout the story. But the amazing part to me was his resilience, that even though all these things were happening, he continued to dream and move forward and think of bigger and better things and take his lumps. Now, it caused him some health problems. He had a nervous breakdown, and he actually just had to stop and go on vacation. His brother insisted at one time. So he wasn't a Superman. He had feelings, but he always just got back up and started working. And so many people thought, we're smarter than you. We can do this better than you. Well, they were wrong. He proved them wrong. Yeah. And even Hollywood was jealous of him. They didn't really like him or want to award him, which even makes what he did in Hollywood with all the Oscars. He still has more Oscars than anyone has ever got.
Yeah.
even though they hated him.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting story. That's why I wrote it. That's why I spent an entire year researching it, because the further I got into it, the more interesting it became.
Well, it is the longest story in the book. As a matter of
It
fact, when
is.
you take a listen to the Audible version, it runs about 2 hours.
Hmm.
It's a long segment, but it's worth listening to. And of course, you're going to
Well,
hear segments. Go
it's
ahead.
kind of many stories.
Right.
This was a story about Mickey Mouse's birth, and then there'll be another story and another story. So it's one of those where you don't have to read it all the way
No.
through.
Mm-mm.
No, you read a little bit and you think, "Oh, that's great," and you pick it up tomorrow and you get something else out of it.
Exactly. We certainly hope people will. And you can do that by going to realimpactbook.com, and you can order your own hardcover, paperback, or Kindle version. But before you order that Kindle version, you might be aware that you can get yourself a free Kindle version or ebook of the Real Impact Daily Inspiration by going to the bottom of realimpactbook.com, clicking on the podcast attendee, and putting in your email address, and then you will have access to and be sent the link to download your ebook. But if you have unlimited Kindle already, you already have access to a free version of Real Impact. And then there are a bunch of other links on that page, on that front page, if you will, of home of realimpactbook.com that have a lot of other things that we'll talk about here in just a few moments. But please go there and check out the Real Impact book series. I actually ordered and have received my hardcover edition of Real Impact Daily Inspiration. I also have the paperback version as well. That was the review copy I received back in October, nearly a year ago. Dennis, you and I began our conversations. I had you on my program to talk about it, and then the light bulb went off going, this would make a great series. And here we are, 3/4 of the way through that series. And it's really, really exciting as we continue to talk with Dennis about Real Impact and Daily Inspiration here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D, along with Dennis Henson. And Dennis, let's dive into the realimpactbook.com page and the different aspects of what you have made available. And then also maybe the last thing you might talk about is, we'll call it the treasure hunt that you've created, where you can win a free Audible version if you can find the treasure. So talk to us about this page and again, the gold that people can dig up, so to speak, when they go there.
The website, we spent a lot of time, and it doesn't take you long to figure that out once you open it up. It's a beautiful website. And I think the first link has the mystery of the lamp. You can click on that and listen to the audio that explains why there's a lamp on the front. There's a link there that where you can help the children. It's a charity program where if you donate, all of the money that you donate goes toward the purchase of these books to give to disadvantaged communities so that young people can benefit. And how can they benefit? Well, the book was designed to help people form the habit of reading something positive every day that moves them toward the goal. Well, in order to do that, you have to have a goal. So if you can find a young person who's drifting and don't know what they want in life, and they can take this book and it helps them decide, I would love to be an architect or an engineer or a veterinarian or a doctor or an attorney, whatever they want to do or be. Maybe they want to be working digital work or online or AI. That's a big thing. Once they've decided what they want to do, the book helps keep them on track and keeps them motivated. So it's very powerful. There is a game that we play. I had a winner a couple of days ago. I always like to get their emails. They seem to be thrilled. Oh, I found the little lamp. So the game is, one of the lamps escaped from the front of the book, and it's hidden somewhere in the pages. And so you have to click on the different links. And of course, it's a different size. So it may be a lapel pin, or it might be in somebody's glasses. You don't ever know. Every month it's in a different place. And if you find it and send us an email, we'll send you the audio book, which is a $17 value. And that's free just to get you to come and look around the website. And then there's a place there that says, makes a great gift. And you click on that and it says, if you want a graduation gift, here's the reason, a wedding gift. And it has all the different ways that you can use the book for a gift. And you have the book. It's less than $50. Isn't that a nice gift? I mean, it's really a quality book, and people will treasure it and keep it for many, many years.
I have the hardcover, and it is really very nice. And the paper that you've used, and the fonts and the ink and all of that, it's just wonderful to flip through. Just stop on any page, especially in the poetry or quotes section. I can say it, and just pick something out and read it, which also goes to the heart of your philosophy, if you will. You encourage people to do something every single day to help them to meet their goal. What is that?
The reason the book was written was like a bolt out of the blue. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there were a tool to help people form the habit of reading something positive every day? And then I realized, well, I've been collecting motivational books, poems, quotes, and short and long stories for 50 years. I can put those together and people can form the habit using this book regardless of their time. It's not an excuse. If you have 2 seconds, you can read a quote. If you have 5 minutes, you can read a poem. If you have 2 hours, like you said, you can read about Walt Disney. So there's, it was written to be like a hammer. It'd be hard to drive a nail without a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could do it, but it makes it so much easier to have a tool that was designed to drive a nail. And that's what this book was designed to help you form a very powerful habit. And even if it's not you, maybe it's your niece or your grandmother, or it could be anyone, and they will enjoy the book. I mean, I can say that because the stories were great before I put them in there. I just organized them, and so there's no question about it's a good book. Everything's fine. I wouldn't have saved it for 50 years had it not been something that was really powerful. So the comments on Amazon just tell it all. I mean, they really are good. I mean, I'm thrilled to death. Yeah. By the way, if you want to help somebody out, Richard or me or someone else, if you read a book that you really love, go to Amazon and give it a 5-star rating and say, oh, I like this book because. So you will have helped that author feel really good, but you will also have helped other people that are looking for something that they're going to enjoy. So I would suggest if you're feeling down someday and you just think, I want to feel better, go help somebody. And that's one way that you can do it.
Yeah, I know the feeling, because during the phase as we are recording these programs, we're going through the phase of having to relocate our residence. And that is a very stressful thing. That can really get you down when you're searching and searching and searching and can't find the place that you'd like to be. And now you got to settle for the place that at least is available to you. And then there's the whole moving aspect, packing everything and then loading it and then getting it to the destination and then unloading and then unpacking. And it's, and that can do it for you. Or any other event that's going on in your life, get a copy, keep it with you. If need be, if you have Audible, and maybe you've purchased the Audible, put it on your phone, hook up your phone to your speakers in your car and listen to it as you're driving down the road. That's what I did initially when I first met you and we did our interview. And I listened to the whole darn book on all of the stories. And it was very helpful. And I'm just grateful that I had that and other books too. I mean, I have I don't know how many, 30 or 40 or 50 books in my Audible library. Yours is one of them. And so I encourage people to get a copy of the Real Impact Daily Inspiration book. It is available through realimpactbook.com, and we will continue here on Tell Me Your Story. as we continue with Dennis Henson regarding the Real Impact Daily Inspiration book. We talk about a lot of different things on this program, and Dennis, it's interesting the conversations that seem to come up rather synchronistically. For me, anyway, and in terms of, as I was sharing with you earlier and our listeners, the conversation I was having with a tow truck driver who basically uh, uh, was hauling away our travel trailer. Unfortunately, it met with a demise, but we did get to enjoy it a couple of times early on. And we got into a conversation about a lot of the stuff that even your story about Walt Disney dealt with in terms of. Now, I'm curious. Walt Disney. Now, this may have been mentioned in the story, but I'm going to ask you the questions just the same. It's not that I wasn't listening. Did Walt Disney actually spend time 4 years in college in terms of animation and those types of things? Because this was part of the conversation that this gentleman and he's got 6 kids, most of them are boys, and only one of them is going to college. It's not that he's discouraging them from going to college, but he's talking to them about learning something, learning a trade like electricity, like being an electrician or a plumber, or in this case, with his company, a tow truck driver and so forth, rather than spending 4 years getting a diploma and then having a massive debt that you have to pay off and settling for working maybe for a while at Chick-fil-A or something like that. After you get out of college, and then you got that debt, that student loan you got to pay off, stay out of college and maybe go to vocational school or find someone you can be an apprentice with. Because the work that he was doing in order to remove this travel trailer from our home, I'll go ahead and give some details. The slide out was stuck open and he couldn't close it. I couldn't close it. The switch wouldn't do it and so forth. And he had to do research with his voltmeter or whatever other tools that he had. He finally found the problem and he was able to slide it in. But he didn't learn that in college. He learned that on the job, working on RVs that he was having to tow this place and that. And to me, Walt Disney is the same kind of person. He's a self-made man.
Yes, he went to art school. His father, although he didn't really like him being an artist, did pay for him to go to art school. But Richard, you're really hitting the nail on the head. Here's the thing. If you don't know what you want, you don't know what to do. If people just go out they finish high school and they say, oh, the next thing's to go to college. Well, it may be and it may not. If you want to become a neurosurgeon, you have to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a choice. That's right. the path, okay? But if you want to become an auto mechanic, you don't need to go to college. You need to go to technical school. Mm-hmm. So the key is you have to decide, what is it I really want to be, what I want to become, what's my life going to be like, and I'll be happy doing that. Then you can decide, well, what is the path that I need to follow that takes me there? It may be college. There are certain things where you cannot be that unless you go through some kind of higher education. Right. But then there are a lot of things that do not require that. I have a master's degree and worked on my doctorate in music. Well, I haven't used music since 1975, 50 years ago. I enjoyed my time at college, but it didn't put me where I needed to be or wanted to be. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a band director, and in order to do that, you had to go to college, and so I did. But I ended up being a business person. The first day I was at Jacksonville State, they gave new incoming freshmen a test. And the test was to see what you should be. And my test came back and said, you should be a businessman. And I thought, that's so funny. That is hilarious, because I'm in music and I want to be a band director, and that's what my life's going to be, and nothing's going to change that. I turned out being a businessman. Anyway, I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy with it, but hopefully this information will change some people for the better.
No, absolutely. And your appreciation for music, and of course when you hear bands on the field during halftime at football games you're watching, that kind of thing, is a nice thing too. For me, I went to junior college after 6 months off after high school. I took basic courses, and English was one of them. I couldn't believe it. I skipped one semester of high school English, and I took Spanish. I should have stayed in English, but then I get out of high school, graduate from high school, and I decided to take English again. And I loved it because it taught me things that I hadn't quite picked up on in the English courses in high school. Not that there was a deficiency. It was just that it was a little more in depth. I mean, I wrote essays, and I cringed when I heard that we had to write 5 essays in a semester. I was like, I've never written an essay before, but I learned how, and I got pretty good marks on those essays. And then I went to broadcast school. That was a 6-month vocational school because I was in radio, and I thought, well, this would be one way to raise the bar, because I felt like the bar needed to be raised, and it still does. But that was my goal, and I went through that course, and I learned an awful lot there too. And I've been learning ever since. Every station I've ever worked for, especially the Christian station, I use the phrase that it was the best education I was ever paid for. Because I didn't just learn about broadcasting and how to get programmers in and out and commercials and what have you, but I learned about comparative religion, sociology, politics, psychology, and the list goes on. And every program that I produce, it's the same thing. That also points up another area too, Dennis, in terms of, let's say you decide to go to a technical school and what have you. Even if you get into a job, even if it maybe is for a short period of time, which could be a year or two, you're going to learn things even in that job that may not even be related to your goal that you can carry forward. That's an important observation for each one to make, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think any kind of education is not going to be bad for you, as long as it's truth and positive. But what I think people would really like is the shortest distance from where they are to where they ultimately really want to be.
Yeah.
If you can avoid all of the, going from one place to the other, you'll get there a lot faster. Disney knew when he was a child,
Yeah.
art's where I want to be. It's what I want to do, and get out of the way, even though his father was against it. And he became very successful in his field because he got an early start, and he had a lot of early failures, which is really the best education. The best education is learning from messing up and saying, well, I won't do it that way again, and doing it right the next time. And if you're already headed in the right direction, you're going to learn a lot faster and get where you want to be a lot quicker.
Yeah. I've even asked that question of many of my guests, how important is failure in the process of learning? And they always put that sucker right up at the top. It's very important because the examples, for example, of, was it Thomas Edison? He had over 900 different versions of the light bulb, and then was asked, how many times did you fail? And I never failed. I just learned 900 and some odd ways that the bulb didn't work. And that's a whole different perspective than I failed 900 and some odd times.
Exactly.
Whole different attitude. Well, our attitude here is that we would really encourage you to get your copy of the book, Real Impact Daily Inspiration. When we come back here after this little pause, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other books that Dennis is working on and that are available as well. And we'll do that as we continue here on the Real Impact Daily Inspiration series on Tell Me Your Story. There is so much more in the pen of Dennis Henson than you will ever know unless you start by going to realimpactbook.com. But Dennis, I know you're working on volumes 2 and 3 of Real Impact Daily Inspiration, but you're also working on some other inspirational books as well. Talk to us about all of that.
Today I'm working on The Laws of Nature for Success. and I'm having so much fun with it. It's something that I've worked on for 50 years. The when I first went into the business world, a very important person, vice president of a very large company, took me under his wing, and he started telling me about there's these certain things, these laws. If you follow those, your life is going to be happy, you're going to be successful, everything's going to be wonderful. But if you're breaking these laws, you're really going to have a difficult time. You're not going to have money, you won't be successful, life's going to be rough. And so he had just given me 3 books, Success, The Glenn Bland Method, Think and Grow Rich, and Greatest Salesman in the World. And I love those books. And when he was telling me this, I said, well, stop, Jack, stop. Where's the book? The Laws of Nature for Success. I want the book. And he laughed and he said, well, no, it's not in any one book. It's a life study. It's in lots of books. You're just going to have to go out and find what they are. So when I left his office, I thought, well, he's wrong. There is a book out there that's got those in there, or an article or something. And so I started searching. This was in 75. Well, by the turn of the century, I realized there is not a book out there that specifically covers that ground. And I realized if it's going to happen, I'm going to have to make it happen. So I started working on it. I had been researching it for years and years. And I thought I had it finished a couple of weeks ago. And then I found, well, it would be better if it had more stories in it that illustrate why this works so well. Yeah. So I'm putting the finishing touches on the stories right now, and it'll be done. I'm also working on another book called The 7 Secrets of Success, which is finished. There's a process. When you get your book finished, then you've got to get someone to do the formatting and get it put up. And if it's a series, you got to get the same person to do it. There's a lot more to publishing a book than just writing the book.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's some would say, well, that's the easy part. It isn't always easy, but yeah.
Compared to the others. And I've written a series on real estate investing, which is 5 books. And I think they're really good if you're interested in learning about investing in real estate. So if you want to know about the books, go to realimpactbook.com, scroll down to the bottom where it says podcast attendee, and there's 3 gifts there for you. One of them is you get the ebook of Real Impact, but there's 2 other gifts, and one of those is you get a big discount on one of my new books. You get it notified, and you get a really good deal on the next books that come out. So that's like a free gift. So be sure to go and click on that link.
Yeah.
That will put you on an email list, but it's not a spam list. It's just, I wrote a new book. Here it is. Yeah. If you want a discount, that's fine. If you'll go and give me a rating, you might even get it for free. So, it's things like that.
Absolutely. Well, in the last minute or two here, before we wrap things up, The Dreamer, Walt Disney is what we're into right now, this particular series, segments of his whole story. Tell us a little bit about your perspectives in the last minute or so, giving you the last word, basically.
There's a lot of stories in the book, and I think they're all good. The Disney story just happens to be the longest one. It's one of my favorites because I spent an awful lot of time on it. And I think you'll enjoy that, but you'll also enjoy Mary Kay and Rocky and all of the others too. They're just great stories. I had over 100 when I started, and I narrowed them down to 33. So I've got a lot of work to do on the second and third book. But I hope you'll go out and get the book or get it for free and give it for a gift to change other people's lives. That's really what I hope you'll do.
Well, with the holidays coming, how ideal that is. So we hope that people will go to Real Impact Book realimpactbook.com. That's realimpactbook.com. Get yourself a copy. Get yourself on that list so that when these other books come out, you'll be notified and take advantage of that big old discount that Dennis is talking about. Dennis, thank you again for joining us. We'll be back again next week with our another continuation of the story of Walt Disney, The Dreamer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., including the Wednesday edition, which features us here on Tell Me Your Story, streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. We hope you'll click subscribe and notification. We also hope you'll go to Amazon and get a copy of Choices. That's my book, 5 Steps for Life. And if you can leave us a tip at PayPal, there are links on the homepage of richarddugan.com to Amazon and PayPal for your convenience. And then spend some time going within listening to that still small voice. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lull, Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.